Oh man. Hello everybody and welcome back to Teacups and Toadstools. I am in HD today because I got a new camera for Christmas and I'm really excited about it because now I can look beautiful and clear. I mean, I looked beautiful before, but you know, now I have a fun camera and a tripod so I can film in fun new locations like my bookshelves at home, so that's pretty fun. Today I have a peppermint patty mug. I got this, my friend Hannah got it for me because we saw it in the store and it was just too cute and she kind of looks like me, so I'm just gonna... So today I thought it would be fun to go through all the books that I read in 2019. I'm totally filming this on a whim, so I'm gonna pull up my Goodreads list and just kind of talk through the books from what I remember, so I think the important things will stick through hopefully. So let's pull that up right now. Alright, so this will kind of be a reflection of what an average college student reads in a year. I will say that since I am studying theater, I am in class a lot more than normal college students might be, so I take like 8 or 9 classes a semester versus 4 or 5, so I'm in class a lot more, and on top of that I have rehearsals in the evenings from 7 to 11, so it's a little hard to find time to read because every class and every rehearsal is so involved. So this year, just to kind of give you an idea of what I read 19 books, which is a little less than I usually read, but it was a crazy year. I was doing a lot, so yeah, so I'm just gonna go through from the start to the finish. First book I read this year was yeah. Okay, so the first book I read this year was Ballet Shoes, and this is a classic children's book. I had never read it before. My roommate, Mary Ellen, loves it, and so I wanted to borrow it from her, and I read it, and it was pretty spectacular. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. It follows 3 sisters, and they each kind of have very different personalities and very different traits and stuff, and it follows, they all 3 are like in the theater and they perform. And so it was just exciting to read, and if you have a kid or are a kid who loves to perform or dance, I would definitely recommend this book. It's pretty short, so it's a fun read. Yeah, it was really good. Okay, so the next one is The Kite Runner, which is a classic novel. I hadn't read it until this year. Let me think. Okay, it was very good. I could not put it down. I remember I read it straight through on 2 plane journeys last winter break, and I absolutely loved it. I'm trying to think. This is an adult novel, so definitely not for children. Yeah, that's what I remember about that. It was just amazing, so spectacular. Okay, so the next book I read was Writing 21st Century Fiction. It's by Donald Mass, and this is a book about writing 21st century fiction. I brought it with me on a trip. I have a tradition of every time we go on a winter break trip, I bring a book about writing with me, so I kind of do some writing while I'm away. This novel, I liked it. I didn't love it, and the reason why is because I don't think it inspired very creative writing. It was more about formulaic writing, which is really helpful when you're trying to market a novel to a modern audience, but I kind of like books that inspire creativity a little bit more than this one did, but I did give it 4 stars. It had a lot of helpful advice. And the next one I read was called All I Know Now by Carrie Hope Fletcher. I have been watching her videos since I was 13. She's a YouTuber and she works on the West End now. She's so spectacular, and I had not read any of her books until this year, and so I read All I Know Now, which was her nonfiction release, which is basically an advice book. I liked it. I would just say that the novel is catered more towards teenagers and like tweens instead of an adult, and so I gave it 3 stars just because it wasn't for me, but I definitely, if you're young, if you're in middle school or high school, would recommend. It's so helpful, and she's so quirky, and I love the whole stylized way that the book is written. Okay, so the next book was a little bit of a weird one. It's called The Name of the Rose, and it's by Umberto Eco. This book was given to me by my grandfather, and it's a mystery that takes place in a monastery, I want to say in the 1300s. I thought it was good. I thought it was well written. It's written like a classic literary book. It's but it was published recently. The only thing I didn't love about this, and I'm looking at my review here, remembering kind of what I thought, there wasn't a lot of plot, and a lot of the novel seemed to be Eco kind of having a conversation with himself about different philosophical ideals instead of actually it being very character driven. So even though the mystery was good, the book itself is very well written. I didn't love it just because it seemed to be the author kind of showing off how smart he was, which kind of turned me off a little bit. After that, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. This book, it was good. I think if you're a Christian, read it. It is definitely has a lot to say. I don't agree with everything that he talks about in the book, and I think a lot of it is dated, but a lot of it is still grounded in things that a lot of Christians believe today. So if that's something that interests you, definitely check it out. I reread Wrinkle in Time this year, which was such a joy because I had read it when I was younger, but I couldn't really remember a lot of it, and so I reread it, and it was the book that I carried around with me to classes because I usually have a book in my backpack, and this is the one I had, and it was so just joyous to jump back into that world, and I just love how mystical that novel is, and it's so much fun to read. That's a children's book. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. It's awesome. All right, so the next book I read was The Paper Magician by Charlie M. Holmberg. This is a fantasy novel that it's very thin. It's not very long, so it was a quick read for me, but yeah, I'm trying to remember what I thought about this. It was good. I couldn't put it down. So I guess in this universe they have like different magicians and they specialize in like different materials. It's like that kind of thing, and this woman ends up specializing in paper, which she doesn't want to. I remember that was like she didn't like that was what she was gifted in. But yeah, so it was really good. I can't remember a lot of what it was about, which probably tells you about, you know, the time I read it, but I remember really loving the writing, so that was very good. Next one is called Dennis Ever After, and it's by Tony Abbott. I talked about this in my Books of the Decade video. So this book is about twin brothers, and one of them is alive and the other passed away when they were very young. And the twin who is dead comes back because he has unfinished business in the real world. And this is a juvenile fiction book, which was very surprising to me because it covers a lot of very serious ideas. But it was very well written and very good. The protagonist is 12 years old, so I'd probably recommend it for about that age group, but it was really good. It was a fun mystery book, and I always love like sort of supernatural mysteries. That's one of my favorite genres, so this one was very enjoyable to read. Okay, so the next book is a book I always recommend at my bookstore for people looking for things in the self-help psychology genre, and it's Grit by Angela Duckworth. One of my friends at school recommended it to me. I don't know if they're watching this right now, but if they are, thanks for the recommendation. But yeah, so this book is, what I love about it is it's a psychology book about the science of grit, and there's a lot of science to back up techniques to help you work harder and be grittier. So one of the problems I have with a lot of self-help books is they kind of spew out a lot of advice with not a lot of science to back it up. This is not the case with this book. It definitely gives scientific studies and evidence of different strategies you can use to be more gritty. Alright, so the next book is We Are Okay. It's by Nina LaCour, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. This was a YA fiction novel, and this is an LGBT novel about a young woman discovering her love, I think, for her best friend, and it goes in and out of like flashbacks and stuff. It's beautifully written. This novel is just so like every word is like butter. It just melts, and it's so fantastic to read. I definitely recommend that for anyone looking for a quick, easy, but meaningful read. It's so good. Okay, so the next book was What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli. This is a book that was recommended to me by one of my kids that I taught at summer camp. She actually gave me a copy of it to read. It was a YA romance novel, which I never ever go for because I'm not a fan of that genre. I will say it was kind of like a Hallmark movie equivalent of a read for me. It was like fun, and it wasn't like too like hard to digest, and it was like easy, and it was cheesy, but I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. And this is also an LGBT story. It surrounds two men who meet in New York City, and they happen to run into each other a lot, and it's got a lot of Dear Evan Hansen references. It was kind of silly, but I enjoyed it. It was cute. Okay, so the next one is You the Career. It's by Benjamin Mathis, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, and he's the guy who started, if you look up, the Urban Confessional, and this is a movement where people stand with signs that say free listening, and they listen to people and people feel that they can tell them things. It's a really beautiful movement. But this novel is actually about making it in LA as an actor. I read this for my LA Business of Theater class that I took last semester, and I would recommend it for any artist going into a field, because it is different than books that will tell you like technical advice. It's very emotional, but it's hopeful. It's hopeful for people who are taking the hard path in life and trying to pursue their art, and it was just really refreshing to read this novel. Definitely recommend it. It's not super well known, but I really liked it. So the next one I read was The Hobbit, actually. I have not ever read the Lord of the Rings books, and I had never read The Hobbit before, and so I was like, it's about time I picked that up. So I did. I loved it. It was great. I could not put it down, and I love the way that he writes. I don't know if I could read the whole series. I might try it, we'll see, but just because it is kind of dense, I might need to wait for like the right time this year to read that, maybe this summer or something, but I loved it. It was great. So the next book is called Our Castle by the Sea, and it's by an author named Lucy Strange, and this is a juvenile fiction book. I bought this with this girl that I have become close to. I got both of us copies so we could read it together. I actually have to check in with her, see if she's read this book, because I liked the cover and I've heard good things about this author. Overall, I thought it was very good. It was another juvenile fiction book that covers like a lot of very serious topics and themes, which was very good to read, and it was neat to read that from the perspective of an author catering to children. It was very cool. This book for me kind of fell middle of the road. I enjoyed it. I thought that the characters were very interesting and the twists were pretty good, but I don't remember it. It kind of didn't feel memorable. It didn't leave like an imprint, so I definitely recommend it for people looking for something good to read, but yeah, not my fave, but it was pretty good. Okay, the next book I read was Homework by Julie Andrews. It's her new autobiography, and I had mentioned in my last video her first autobiography, Home, which is about her pre-Hollywood years, and this is about her Hollywood years. So it was kind of neat to read just like behind the scenes stories of like Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, and just hear about her marriages and how they fell apart, and her children and all of that mixed in with all of her career. It's just really inspiring as an actress who, you know, wants to get married and wants to have children eventually, to read about people who are doing that. It's, you know, and she was busy, but she, you know, loved her life and had a good relationship with her husband despite their struggles. It was very, very good to read, and she's a great writer. Autobiographies sometimes aren't my favorite because the people who write them aren't writers first, which is fine, that's totally cool, but this is definitely a book that she just knows how to write. It's fantastic. Alright, the last book I finished this year was The Handmaid's Tale, a classic. Again, have not read it. I'm planning on trying to read the sequel this year. We'll see if that ends up being in the cards. I kind of like to just follow whatever my whims are with reading instead of forcing myself to read certain things. I enjoyed this book a lot. It was, again, a book I could not put down. I gave it to my father immediately to read because I knew he would really like it. It is as good as people say it is. It lives up to the hype. I sometimes have a tough time reading books that are really popular because I get critical of them because they are so popular, and I'm like, oh, well, here's what's wrong with this, and here's what's wrong with this, but this lives up to the hype. Those are all the books I read in 2019. I had a good year. I think I gave almost every book more than 3 stars. I didn't read a book that I disliked this year, so definitely a good solid year. My goal for the upcoming year is to read 25 books instead of 20. I'm trying to build some good reading habits in so I'm able to read more. I've realized reading is like meditation. Like once you get into it, you're transported into another world, and I need more of that in my life, and so I really want to read a lot more than I had this last year. But yeah, so thank you for watching and tuning in today. I hope this is interesting for you and you found some new titles for you to check out. Subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you want to hear more reading adventures from me or other random stuff. I have some plans for the future that I'm really excited, maybe some scripted videos with some special guest stars, so we will see. Anyway, have a good day, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye!